We are Rogue Media Sports.
There are any number of reasons you might consider selling your home. To move closer to family, live within a smaller budget, or just wanting a change of scenery. Whatever your reasons, having to figure out all the various housing market trends in your area may not be what you signed up for. That's where an agent who is a realtor comes in. Realtors have the expertise to help you find the right price and navigate the process to sell your home in a way that's right for you. That's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
You haven't heard about the McCrispy yet? Well, then, you probably haven't heard the sweet silence after the first crispy bite either. Go try it for yourself to hear the best nut sound you've ever heard.
It is the Doomsday podcast. Matt Mosley, Ed Werder, produced by Chris Gross under the headline of Frito Nation Productions. And we're going to get into all this. Cowboys with a lot to play for today. Came out on Thanksgiving and really not only laid an egg, but made some very questionable decisions that we will be talking about throughout this podcast. But first off, I did want to address a really tragic, heart-wrenching story. Marcus Paul, Cowboys strength and conditioning coach. You've all heard and read about the medical emergency that happened out there. And in Tuesday, the Cowboys called off practice. And then we got the word yesterday that Marcus Paul had died. 54-year-old Cowboys strength and conditioning coach, former NFL player, played for the Bears. In fact, played with Ron Rivera, the Redskins coach at one point. Ed Werder, and happy Thanksgiving to you. But it was a sad, sad time leading up to this game. Can you shed a little light on Marcus Paul and what he meant to this organization? And then, of course, the Giants organization that he had spent so many years with before coming to the Cowboys.
Yeah, Marcus Paul played for the Chicago Bears as a defensive back. And, you know, from the reaction that we've seen around the league from all of the teams and players that he engaged with over the years, he was obviously universally beloved and respected. A guy, you know, who was always outgoing, happy by nature. Mike McCarthy described him as a guy who could get on players and challenge them in an appropriate way with tough love. And obviously, you know, he won 5 Super Bowl rings, 3 with the New England Patriots under Mike Wojcik and 2 with the New York Giants. So a very accomplished guy. Mike McCarthy, when he took the Cowboys job, decided that he was not going to renew Mike Wojcik's contract. And he promoted Marcus Paul into the primary role. And so, you know, given the pandemic and all that entailed and the limitations that created, Marcus became very much involved on a personal basis with players as far as, you know, making sure they had the right equipment setups for their home gym since they couldn't come to the Star and work out in the off season. He made sure and sometimes took money out of his own pocket to get guys their equipment in an expedient way. Ultimately, the organization paid or the league paid for them to have those things. But he also created, you know, personalized regimens for each guy while he was away from the facility so that when they did come back, that they would be in appropriate shape to resume the season and get started. And obviously, when you're in that capacity, you're someone who interacts with all parts of the football team. You know, you engage with the coaches, you engage with all the players across the entire spectrum, offense, defense, special teams. And so I think we saw a real outpouring of emotion today. They wore the decal on their helmets or the coaches on their hats. There was a tribute on the scoreboard to Marcus Paul. The players, before they went in the locker room on the field, were circled up and led in prayer on one knee by Joe Looney. So yeah, it was a really emotional thing, and I'm sure it created some additional hardship from an emotional point of view and from a practical standpoint that they were preparing for the Washington game on a short week as it was, and really the only day they had that they were going to be on the field of any real significance was canceled because of what happened with Marcus Paul and the emergency at the Star that ultimately, you know, led to his untimely death at the age of 54. All that being said, I think I expected the Cowboys to play with great intensity and ferocity to honor Marcus Paul's memory. And I think the fact that they did that and executed well early in the game made it clear that that wasn't the reason that they lost this game. And I think we'll get into that. And I'm going to put an awful lot of it on Mike McCarthy.
All right. Well said. And our heart goes out to the Marcus Paul family and our condolences. And we will keep them in our thoughts and prayers, obviously, moving forward. All right, Chris Gross, we are going to get to the game. And we are going to have a lot to say about Mike McCarthy, some of the decision-making. Please play the music, sir. All right, it is the Doomsday podcast back together via Zoom. I think our Zoom has allowed us to continue to – Zoom sounds a little different, but thanks to Chris Gross and our production team from Frito Nation Productions – Ed, that makes it sound like we have a large production team.
It does. I was going to say, how many people are on this payroll?
I know, but doing a great job, and we appreciate it so much. But we are back with you, and we wish you a happy Thanksgiving. And we have spent an afternoon. Hopefully, you got to, whether it was virtual or not, you got to be with family members and catch up with folks that you love. And I tell you, some people love the Cowboys. It's a love-hate relationship after days like today. And the final score obviously looked like some kind of blowout, but the Cowboys were right there. And in fact, Ed, let's start right there. I mean, I think that's one of the hard things to digest in addition to our Thanksgiving meals today is just that they were right in the ball game. And let's start with the one, I think the one that is the biggest head scratcher to me. And I would think it's probably the biggest head scratcher to you as well. But I don't really have much of an explanation. And you and I both just jumped on that conference call and heard Mike McCarthy, and he was somewhat defiant with his reasoning for approving. I mean, obviously, even if Fossil wants to call some kind of fake punt, if it happens on the field, I mean, the head coach has to approve that or not. But he said, he basically made some statement about how, well, you don't get rewarded. You got to put great players in position to make big-time plays. And, Ed, it's 20-16. You're in your own territory at about your own, 20, 25-yard line, and they call a dang on 4th and 10, a fake punt reverse play. As you said earlier, maybe there was some kind of pass-run option on it, but it got blown up immediately. And I have to say, I mean, the ball game was pretty much over at that point once the Redskins punched that in. So of all the McCarthy decisions this season, to me, this has to be the most baffling one.
Well, first of all, I would say that his reliance or the way he values analytics and all these other new metrics into the coaching decision-making equation seems out of context to me. I don't think he's properly evaluating it using common sense and logic to balance whatever the analytics tell you to do. And I kind of want to take a big picture look at what he did today. I mean, we're looking at the Cowboys being swept by Washington for the first time since 2012. They won the first game by 22. They won this game by 25. Those are the Cowboys' two most one-sided defeats this season. The Cowboys have a pronounced lack of talent now with all the injuries, which was, became a bigger part of the situation today. And that's exaggerated by the fact that they were so obviously poorly coached in a game where if they win, they're in first place. And they have a significant schedule advantage the remainder of the season in the division. By far the easiest schedule in the NFC East. And for a very long time, watching this game, I planned to excoriate Ezekiel Elliott for his 5th lost fumble of the season and the consequences of those errors on his football team. But then McCarthy did something incomprehensible that far exceeded the mistakes any of his players committed, in my mind. He coached in a manner that afforded his team absolutely no chance to win. I can't recall a higher number of bewildering coaching decisions in a game where a team is playing a close game with first place in the division on the line. As you referenced, a fake punt from your own 24 on 4th and 10. And that's after you failed on 4th and 1 from your own 34 with a pass in the second quarter. They fail both times. The opponent scores touchdowns both times. It's totally nonsensical to me. It was as if McCarthy is coaching with a decided talent disadvantage against a dominant team like the Chiefs, not a 3-win team like Washington. Washington got the ball in the Dallas 19, the 33, and the 23 because of failed 4th downs and Ezekiel Elliott's turnover. That was 17 points. Plus, they got a defensive touchdown that essentially clinched the game. I just think it's completely ridiculous that Mike McCarthy just can't seem to bring himself to punt like every coach has done for the past 81 years in those situations. Either that or nobody trusts their defense less than Mike McCarthy. Or possibly John Fossil's the head coach, and we didn't know it. But you mentioned, it's one, like, how can you go for it on 4th and 10 from your own 23? And so that's one part of the decision. And then the play itself, Cedric Wilson on a reverse, he ran 39 yards according to Next Gen Stats. He ran 39 yards on a fake punt that resulted in a loss of 1. That's the 5th longest distance traveled on a negative running play in any game across the NFL this entire season. They are 4 of 12 in 4th down situations this season. That's the most failed tries on 4th down from a team's own territory of anybody in the league this entire season. That's the kind of reckless decision-making that we are seeing from Mike McCarthy.
Wow. I mean, Del Hansen Unplugged has nothing on you. That was nice. I kind of like that run you went on there. I'm still, Ed, can I examine a little bit of that explanation? Just what Mike McCarthy tried to say is that they make the call because it was like they saw something. I mean, the way that play unfolded, the Redskins were in exactly the right. I mean, they had the thing. It's like they were just waiting on it. So all this let's just catch everybody by surprise stuff. There was nothing about the way they set up. And I think what I heard McCarthy say was, well, the gunner made a nice play. Well, the gunner just simply came up and set the edge on a reverse that happened on a punt that happened right in front of his eyes. So it's not like the gunner should have completely surprised the punt team.
You're giving the defense all kinds of time to react when you're forcing the guy with the ball in his hands to run 40 yards before he even turns upfield toward the line of scrimmage. And it was 4th and 10 in a 4-point game. You're on your own 24. You're gambling the whole game there. Why? It made no sense. And here's what Mike McCarthy said when he was asked about it after the game. You won't get anywhere if you're thinking about negatives all the time. Obviously, It was a solid play call. It's a good play design. I agree. I disagree with all 3 of those final sentences. It was a reprehensibly bad decision. And it cost them any final chance to win the game. And what do you mean you don't get anywhere if you're only thinking about the negatives all the time? Like you're not supposed to put factor in the risk into the equation when you're making a big decision like that? That's ridiculous.
I agree. And furthermore, you lose credibility as a head coach. I mean, you remember... It's one thing if Bill Belichick, and he did a few years ago, he got beat up for doing something, going for it on his own 20 or 30. You remember that? I think it was.
Like it was against the Colts. It was a Tom Brady, Peyton Manning game. Yeah. Yeah. He did. He got ridiculed for it.
He got beat up.
The analytics people basically defended it as the right decision. But it's gotten to the point now where these analytics people, whoever they are, and McCarthy has a number of them on his staff who influence these decisions. But it's almost like they don't take common sense into the equation. They don't put the risk into the equation. And you never value a punt. You never trust your defense to make a play. Well, their defense made the biggest play they had all day today.
Correct.
When Jalen Smith made that interception under pressure and nearly scored a touchdown. And maybe he does if Leighton Vander Esch can get in position to make a block on Terry McCollin. who makes the tackle on a hustle play at the 3-yard line. But, I mean, I just can't tell you how much the Cowboys squandered with this loss today. Because if you look at the numbers and what they had a chance to do if they win this game, I'm virtually certain that they go win the division. Now, maybe they don't because they lost Zach Martin today and Cam Fleming, who started at left tackle. But, you know, there were 3 teams in the Super Bowl era that have made the playoffs following a 4-7 start. The 95 Chargers, the 96 Jaguars, and the 2008 Chargers. But no team in the Super Bowl era has made it starting 3-8. And if you look at where they would have been, the Eagles' next 4 games are against opponents who are combined 28-12. They got to play Seattle, the Packers, the Saints, the Cardinals. The Giants' next 4 games are against teams that are 22-17. Washington's next 4 games are against teams that are 24-16. So those 3 teams that they would have been competing for the NFC East title against, you can argue they still are if you'd like to. But the Cowboys' next 4 opponents are 15-24. So everybody else in the division was playing a schedule against teams with a cumulative winning record, and the Cowboys were playing against teams who were 15-24 in their next 4 games. They were going to have a chance to establish themselves atop this division if they won this game. And I just can't believe how carelessly they approached it.
They do. I wish you could locate the FPI now. I remember they were like, what was it, a 10% chance or something last week?
Last week.
Probably gone down. Yeah, probably gone down a little bit. And, you know, with as dreadful as this division is, you can't ever like truly count everybody out. But if you think about it, they've tried desperately to eliminate themselves from this playoff race. I mean, it's not like I trust Washington. I don't see Washington and go, that's the team that's going to take the, you know, they're going to do it. You can't look at the Eagles and ever go, that's going to be the team. You certainly can't do that with the Giants. I mean, it's going to be a bad team that wins this division. But to your point, the bad team could have been the Cowboys. and they couldn't get it done. And another point you made, that was a big play in this game, was McLaurin. And that was a great, you know, that's a great thing. And coaches are going to show their players at all different levels of that's a guy. That guy ran a pass play, was sort of out of the play. And you're right. Vander Esch tried to put a body on him and was scared of getting called for a block in the back. So kind of just tried to kind of put his body in front of him. And that guy got around that and raced out. And we both know Jalen Smith doesn't look like his former self at Notre Dame. He never looks, even when he's trying to chase people down, he never looks that fast. And McLaurin ate him up. He went down and got him like a cheetah. And you know, it was a nice play by Jalen Smith, but that was a 4-point swing in that game. It's 2020 if McLaurin doesn't go make that play.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of their problems, you know, throughout the game, and really has been an issue over the course of the entire season, is their failure to score touchdowns in the red zone, while at the other end they almost always let the opponent score a touchdown. I think it was 21 of the first 23 times through part of the game today that their opponent had gotten in the reds or gotten in a goal-to-go situation, had scored a touchdown 21 out of 23 times. And the Cowboys went 0 for 3 in this game. And, you know, I mentioned the Elliott fumble. You know, he's lost 5 fumbles. That's the most by a non-quarterback since Doug Martin in 2015. And the last non-quarterback to have more was Ahmad Bradshaw in 2010 for the Giants. But the points off turnovers, another huge issue for the Cowboys in almost every game this year. They've now been outscored off turnovers 113-25. That's a difference of 88 points. The opponents have scored 88 more points off turnovers than the Cowboys have to this point in the season. And that is by far the worst in the league. In fact, it is exactly double the difference of the next closest team, which is the Broncos, who are minus 44. The Cowboys are minus 88. That's how ridiculously bad this team is.
Yeah, it's been a disaster. I mean, this head coach is not going to get fired because he just got here and has a lengthy contract. And but boy, he's really he's embarrassed himself at times this season, and I would say, Ed, and we'll certainly get into it when we talk to Stretch here in a few minutes. But the other play, I've been kind of obsessed with the fake punt. But and you brought it up, but I mean, just to zero in on it a little more, second quarter, Cowboys go for it on their own 34-yard line. Again, it's just smacks of desperation. And I thought you made a good point. It's almost kind of like, oh, we got nothing to lose. Our season's over anyway. We're playing the superior team. That's what you do when you're playing the Steelers and you truly think like the season's already over and you're playing an undefeated team. This was 3-7 versus 3-7. We think fairly similar talent. Cowboys obviously have more depth and talent at the receiver position. I think you could make an argument the quarterbacks are at least level. Cowboys might be a little ahead because of Alex Smith, what all he's had to overcome. But the Cowboys went out there. You just kind of thought McCarthy was going to maybe bring something that would give a Cowboys an edge. We thought it may be a breath of fresh air, all of that kind of thing. And it's really been anything but. I don't think anybody's like desperate to get Jason Garrett back or anything like that. But I'm just saying McCarthy's not really done anything to distinguish himself. Like, other than the fact you say he won a Super Bowl with the Packers, there's nothing really he's done during this time to make you go, oh, man, this is going to be – we have this to look forward to in the future.
Well, I understand the logic that Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones used and applied to the situation in that, they saw a team that had a lot of really good young, especially offensive players who were still in their early part of their primes, or so it seemed, in Dak Prescott, in Ezekiel Elliott, in Zach Martin, in, they didn't know they were going to have CeeDee Lamb, but Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup. They thought they had a lot of young, talented, skill position people who'd be able to score a lot of points in the right offensive system. And I expressed concern from the very beginning that he was not somebody who valued to the degree the Cowboys are paying Ezekiel Elliott the running back position. And I think we've seen that play out. He does not – you have the highest paid running back in football with a $90 million contract, and you have a head coach who really doesn't play the offense through the running back to any great extent. And the gamble you talk about a few minutes ago where they go for it on 4th and 1 from their own 34 in a tie game in the second quarter, a tie game. Do they run Elliott then? No. It's 3rd and 1. They run a jet sweep to rookie CeeDee Lamb. And on 4th and 1, do they run Elliott then? No. They have their backup quarterback throw a pass to the rookie wide receiver. That's their high percentage play. A backup quarterback to a rookie receiver is your high percentage play in that circumstance. But, McCarthy, I mean, he does have great credibility in terms of his record. He did make the playoffs, 9 times in 13 years in Green Bay. Obviously, he's always had a Hall of Fame quarterback, whether it was Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers. And he had that early on here with Dak Prescott, but they still weren't winning. They were still, 2-3, and really should have been 0-5 then. So this is a team that obviously has a lot to prove as far as not only whether they have the right talent in the locker room, but also whether what McCarthy is trying to bring to the organization fits the skill set of the people that have been drafted to play key positions on this team.
Yeah, I would. This would have been one, Ed, that I would have valued the post game. I always miss it, but the post game Jerry breakdown, because I just got to think, and of course Jerry's always tries to find a silver lining, but I would think 3-7, a chance, like you said, to kind of, in a way, take the upper hand in this stupid playoff race that is the NFC East, and they didn't do it. And I hate that we don't get to really hear from the owner other than, via some kind of radio show during the week. I mean, I always kind of like the unvarnished reaction after these ball games. And we don't get that this year. That's one of the many things that COVID-19 has taken away from us.
Well, the Cowboys failed to win the NFC East last year when it only would have taken 8-8. And now it might only take 5 or 6 wins, and they're still not going to do it in all likelihood. Now, he fired the coach last year, but that coach was there 10 years and never did anything of great significance. McCarthy's only in his first year here, and there's all kinds of justifications for the team to fail, from, the way the transition was abbreviated and negatively affected because of all the COVID limitations and the pandemic. And then he lost his quarterback 5 games into the season, and both of his offensive tackles. So I'm not saying there aren't real legitimate reasons for him to point to and say, well, this is why we didn't meet our expectations. But nobody thought you're going to be able to win this division with 6 or 7 wins. And you're right. I would love to hear Jerry's honest evaluation to critical and objective questioning by legitimate reporters after a debacle like this, instead of him and doing so in the immediate aftermath of it, right after he leaves the locker room, and not a day and a half later when he's on with his official, radio station hosts. It's a whole different thing. And Mike McCarthy probably doesn't know from that standpoint how lucky he is right now.
I think that is a fair point right there. He doesn't get to. He's not questioned and all those things that other coaches have experienced being publicly questioned. All right, Ed, there's some things I want to get to, and I want to get your take on the defensive side of the ball. But let's go now to our visit with former Cowboys scout and coach Glenn Stretch Smith with his grades. And Stretch, as you come to us, happy Thanksgiving to you. Sounds like you have some good family there in town. I know you guys are socially distancing, doing all those great things that we do. But, boy, I tell you, an unfortunate ending for the Cowboys. Let's work through it, and let's start with a couple of curious – I want to get your take on a couple of curious decisions in this game. First being in the second quarter, Cowboys decide to go for it on their own 34-yard line, and threw a pass on 4th and 1. And you can argue that the defender arrived early, all of that. But again, you put it in the officials' hands. What was Stretch? I understand that you did not really appreciate that decision.
Yeah, guys, I don't like to get on, and I know. You'll understand this. It's easy to critique calls in the game. I mean, they're good calls if they work. They're bad calls if they don't work. Situationally in this football game, when you have decided that you're going to pay the kind of money you're paying to a running back who can hammer it in there and get one, I get it. The offensive line was beaten and dinged up right there, and you really had turned into a one-dimensional football team. But when you can't line up, guys, and get a hat on a hat and get a yard, I don't care where you're at on the football field. I don't care what point it is in the game. That you are showing that you don't have confidence in multiple areas of your football team to call a hitch. And to me, you only call that. And that is only a situation if it was checked outside, which that would mean the quarterback would have to check that play. Now, it's very possible he could have gone to the line of scrimmage and checked that. So, again, that's why I'm hesitant to be critical of those type calls. But what I don't like is the 4th and 10 fake where you're running a deep reverse to a guy, and he's, he really had 2 options to either run the ball or throw the ball, neither one of which was there because Washington was in a safe punt return. I mean, their defense was still out there, minus a guy back to catch the punt. So I thought both calls were very, very poorly timed. I thought both calls were very poorly executed.
Well, Stretch, I would say this to your To your point about the actual play call, which I assume is more Kellen Moore's responsibility than it is Mike McCarthy's, I'll blame McCarthy for going for it in a close game from his own 34 in the second quarter. But to your point, you don't use a $90 million running back, or the other option, not to throw the ball there, is the quarterback sneak it, which they did with Andy Dalton the next time they had a short yardage situation like that.
Correct. So that's the whole, Ed, I'm with you, and you're completely correct in what you're saying. Now, the only thing that I'll question is, and again, we don't know this going into a game plan situation, is, this, I know Ed and I know Matt, I mean, you're holding that card. You've got prioritized what you like in certain down and distance situations. I find it hard to believe that in that part of the game that's a call that you say, boy, I feel good about this. I mean, we're backed up in our end in a tight football game, and I'm going to go out there and, boy, I'm going to double down on 16 with the damn dealer showing a 10. I mean, let's do that. Let's just for craps and giggles think we can get a 4 or 5 here to win this hand. It just didn't make any sense, and it's certainly from a gambling risk-reward situation, it doesn't make any sense.
It smacked, in both instances, it smacked of sort of a desperate type team. We've seen college coaches, Art Briles, Mike Leach, others that do that type of stuff in the second quarter stretch, and we don't often see it in the NFL. It's the kind of thing that a guy you remember, Coach Switzer, that Ed covered and you worked under stretch, that we obliterated him for going for it. And that wasn't even, this was really a curious decision-making. Now let's work through a couple other things. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball stretch a little bit, and let's work through some of what this game plan looked like. Ed mentioned that this running back, who we always bring up how much he makes, it's always going to be thrown in his face. And I get that. I understand that. Well,
it should be thrown in his face. He held out to get the contract 2 years early.
Absolutely. But what I'm saying is the second half, I hear, Zeke has just touched the ball for the 6th time. And so, part of it is they lost their left tackle. They lost their right tackle in short order within about within about 2 minutes of each other. So I don't know how much that had a role in it, but Stretch, I would certainly say McCarthy did not have much of a commitment to the run game in this particular ball game.
Well, and so my question is, guys, who's calling the game? Is it McCarthy, or has he in fact turned it over to Kellen Moore? And if Kellen Moore is the guy, I mean, I just, again, it's prioritizing what you feel good about in certain situations. And that's, I don't like saying, boy, I don't like that particular play call, because you have to have put something down on your play card that says, we feel really good about 1, 2, and 3. I mean, in the same ways that they did last week when they went for 2 in a situation where they handed it to Zeke and he went out and ran an option, pitched it to CD, and it was a walk-in. In the same way, which the previous week they went out, moved Zeke out into an empty set, opened and threw him the ball on down there in the red zone. He sticks it in the end zone for a touchdown. You have to think they felt good about that last week in a football game against Minnesota. Now you turn it to this week in a football game against a team that does not have a good secondary. They tackled well today, but you can't convince me that is a play that you felt good about calling in that situation. And I guess I'm giving you a long answer, but I don't care if it's McCarthy or Kellen Moore. You can't feel good about that call at that time of the game. And again, I am going to continue to say the running back, because just like Ed said, I mean, when you're on a football team and you're all about we instead of me, and you decide that before the quarterback is going to get his money and they're in discussion with that, you're gonna take yourself and you're gonna go hold out 2 years before your contract expires. And so every bit of criticism that I'm going to give Zeke Elliott is, you know what, he feels like a me guy in a lot of situations. And you guys know I've graded him very fairly. He does a great job in protection. He carries the football well. Unfortunately, he's had a little issue spitting it up this year and dropping it on the ground. But guys, this running back to have held out like that, I can't even remotely hold back in thinking about giving him a chance.
All right, in the quarterback stretch, the quarterback play today, you know, he was for a long period of this game was extremely efficient, and you know, it was really putting up pretty good numbers. This secondary, for whatever reason, Washington has been pretty good pass defense this year. They're ranked pretty high, believe it or not. But he got on a roll for a little bit, had his moments in this game, missed some receivers. What did you make of Dalton's performance?
Well, I thought he did an okay job in the first half of managing the football game, which is what he needs to do now. When you become a one-dimensional football team, he's not the guy. He can't be the guy like Dak was who can go throw it 50 times a game. He's got to be able to run the football and play action off of that. It's hard to be critical of him when your offense is one-dimensional, but I mean, I just thought he did an average job today, and at best, I would give the quarterback a C today with his complete play when you combine a decent first half with a not very good second half.
All right, and Stretch, over on the defensive side of the ball, they have made this young player, Gibson, I mean, look like an all-pro. I mean, we didn't know much about any of these Redskins running backs, and my goodness, this guy has run all over them. First game, I think he had 124 yards rushing. Is this a case of, I know Gregory got banged up, came back into this game. What did you make of that front seven and their performance in this game?
Well, they didn't play as well as they played in the previous two games. And then you combine that with they really got handled up front. I'm talking about on the inside. This is a team that is in dire need of another corner, another safety, and dire need of some inside tackles if this is the front that they're going to play. And you've seen Washington twice come and attack the inside of this team. I thought they played okay, kind of in spurts in the football game. But the thing I didn't like was, once again, you get down in the red zone, they don't come up and set the edge. There was another opportunity where it bounced outside, where Jalen Smith got caught inside and can't get outside because he's the guy that's supposed to set the edge. So I didn't think this defense played very well today. I think they got exposed again from a secondary standpoint. And anytime you're having to play guys, like Robinson and I don't know, Barwin or whoever the guys they just took off the practice squad at corner, that tells you, I mean, that you're not very good in the secondary. And I keep hammering that home because this is a situation now where they're kind of out of their misery. They lost this football game today. They need to get back up there and get that early draft pick. They've got plenty of holes on that defensive side that they need to fill.
All right, and lastly, I was just going to ask you this about this defense. Is this Nolan that we hold accountable when you see Gregory diving off the field? They have to burn a timeout there. It just, they still at times, and that was like a 3rd and 10. That was after that one play. Another play, they couldn't get the right personnel in there, and they were all discombobulated before a 3rd and 10 play. This still looks pretty disorganized to me at times.
No question. I mean, they had 13 guys on the field in the play that you're talking about. I mean, that's hard to do. 13? I mean, that tells you you're not getting the call from the sideline, whether you want nickel, dime, what you want in the game. I saw Washington shift a couple of times to empty sets. Dallas looked as if they had never seen an empty set. They were trying to kick a guy outside to make sure they were covering everybody. So, where Mike Nolan, I'd given him credit. I mean, we're back to seeing some of their issues, some of their shortcomings, and it bothers me that they still haven't got these issues corrected. So, I mean, being very critical of the defense today because, quite frankly, other than Gregory and Alden Smith a few times, I did like that they, Jalen ran underneath the zero or the shallow route for the interception. But, I mean, he couldn't go score with it, which is a little bit bothersome. But I don't think this defense is still playing where they need to play. And I'm talking about from a coordination standpoint, and to be this deep into the season and still making those mistakes is something that's got to run up a red flag to everybody in that organization.
All right, Ed, would you please wish Stretch a happy Thanksgiving? His significant other has prepared a large meal for him, and I think that's where he's headed right now. So please take this opportunity to wish his family a happy Thanksgiving.
When you tell me it's a holiday, it's Stretch and his significant other has made a large meal, it leads me right to Dale Hansen must be coming over.
I tell you what, you just had it on the highway, Ed, and turned down the damn dirt roads. No, that didn't happen. But I appreciate the thoughts. And hey, happy Thanksgiving to all you guys and all our
Good
listeners.
to see you as always, Stretch.
All right, have a blessed day, fellas. Thanks a lot.
There he goes, Glenn Stretch Smith with Stretch Plays. And what a boy, something Stretch. I know he doesn't do a lot of this, but I hope there's some Miller Lite out at the Stretch compound this evening. Miller Lite's the only beer of the Dallas Cowboys. Miller Lite has a 30-year partnership with the team dating back to 1991 when the team was still playing at Texas Stadium. During the 2020 season, Miller Lite celebrating 60 years of Cowboys greatness. Pick up special mark packaging, Cowboys 60th anniversary imagery and logo at participating retailers. In this holiday season, Miller Lite will celebrate a unique occasion with the Cowboys. As title sponsor of the iconic Thanksgiving Day game, Miller Lite and the Cowboys will produce new holiday knitwear, sweaters, hats, socks, with proceeds to be donated to the Salvation Army. You saw the nice halftime show tonight. I believe that was somebody named Kane. Kane. Thought he did a nice job out there. Celebrate responsibly. Kane Brown, yes. Celebrate
big country music
responsibly.
guy.
Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. You drink that stuff, and you can stay thin and healthy like Ed Werder. Yes, Doomsday Podcast continues on, and happy Thanksgiving again to everyone. Thank to Miller Lite, our fine sponsor, and appreciate all our sponsors this year. It's been a lot of fun, even though the season has not been very fun for Cowboys fans. We appreciate you coming to us every Sunday evening into Monday morning, and appreciate everybody who's been so committed to our podcast. And we always appreciate that. And Ed always is good about getting that out on Twitter, even though I'm still fighting for the right to get back on Twitter, Ed. I've now been locked out for over 2 weeks, and I've got people at all levels of different companies working to get me on, but it's not working very well. But I'm getting closer by the day.
You're handling it with remarkable patience. I was going berserk, and I was only out for like 4 hours 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, well, I no longer have the power of ESPN behind me to step in and help me, but I did get right before Thanksgiving. People try to jump in and help, so we'll see if I can maybe get this thing knocked out. All right, let's hit a couple of things, Ed. The defense, Cowboys defense. We were just looking at a couple of these things. Of course, we all, Ed, you and I, are people that just know all of this off the top of our head. Antonio Gibson has just become a star in this league, mainly because when he plays the Cowboys, he goes crazy. 3rd-round pick out of Memphis. And today has 20 carries for 115 yards, 3 touchdowns. Ed, I think we did the math on this. That would put Antonio Gibson at 243 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns on, I believe, 40 carries this season. And so continues to run it up there at over 6 yards a clip against the Cowboys defense. Ed, that was when we knew the Redskins in Cleveland completely exposed the Cowboys. We thought they had kind of solidified things, and they were back to their old tricks today. Randy Gregory left this game for a little bit, came back in, did have the 2 sacks, Ed, but this front seven getting gashed again today by the Washington football team.
Well, and really Washington, their approach on offense, even in the passing game, was to try to exploit the Cowboy linebackers in pass coverage. They clearly concentrated Alex Smith's passing targets on the running backs and the tight ends through the early portion of the game. He really never got the ball vertically down the field at all against the defense. And that's where most teams have exploited the Cowboys. They've given up a ridiculous number of touchdowns compared to the interceptions that they've taken. And so, obviously the front seven is not – there isn't a solution yet on their ability to stop the run because Antonio Gibson, as you mentioned, he's a rookie. He's got two 100-yard rushing games so far. They're both against the Cowboys. And the one today, he became the first rookie with 3 touchdowns on Thanksgiving Day since Randy Moss 22 years ago, and his vengeance for the Cowboys not drafting him and taking Greg Ellis instead. He was furious about that, and we all know the reasons why. Michael Irvin's off the field issues at the time wouldn't allow Jerry to justify it, but the one time Jerry takes a stand in the draft for morality and righteousness, it cost him one of the greatest receivers in the history of the game. Because that's as it should be. But yeah, so and I just don't know. I really expected the Cowboys to win this game today, and I really thought because of the scheduling situation, hey, they're going to be important again. It's going to be ridiculous whoever wins the division. It's going to create a lot of mock and ridicule for whatever team that is. But it's until April in the draft, it's going to be better than it is for the other 3 members of the division who don't win the worst division in football, one of the worst in the history of the game. But now it's as we try to take a look forward. I mean, their next game is scheduled to be at Baltimore a week from tonight. But the Ravens were supposed to play the Steelers tonight, but that game was postponed until Sunday because of the Ravens have arguably the biggest outbreak of COVID positive players and staff that the league has witnessed to this point. It was Tennessee about 6 weeks ago, but with Lamar Jackson testing positive, last year's league MVP testing positive today, the Ravens now have 11 players on the reserve COVID list. So not only can we not be sure whether they'll play the Steelers on Sunday or whether the circumstance will be resolved in time for them to move that game to Monday or Tuesday, but then what happens to the game against Dallas? Does the Dallas game get pushed to the following Sunday? I don't know. It's a lot of things in flux right now as it relates to the Cowboys playing the Ravens.
Cowboys hoping the Ravens have to forfeit that game. And
otherwise, they'll have to defend Des Bryant, who might be on a Randy Moss-like vengeance tour himself.
Oh my goodness, would that not be an interesting? Yes, Des has been activated recently, and I don't believe he's one of the COVID-impacted players. And also that the highest paid running back in the game, Zeke Elliott. We did look at the numbers. I believe in the 2 games against the Washington football team, 77 rushing yards combined in those 2 games and 0 touchdowns. 0 touchdowns rushing. And so, again, Antonio Gibson, 3rd-round pick from Memphis on his rookie contract, whatever we came up with, I think it was 243 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, part of it is in this game, they didn't really hand the ball to him a whole lot. To get him going. And then when they tried to commit to him, it looked like he was running hard in that 3rd quarter. And, of course, on, I believe, his 2nd carry of the 2nd half, he was reaching out, trying to get a first down, and fumbled the ball. And how many times does that make for this season? That's
He has 6 fumbles and he's lost 5. That ties for the most in the NFL at this point in the season. And all but the one today was turned into a touchdown by the opponent, the Washington football team, as we like to call them now. They only converted Zeke's most recent fumble into a field goal today.
Oh, man. That is good information. I knew you would have that on the top of your head. Ed, anything else you want to share tonight? Any late breaking? I can see you via Zoom. I know people are texting you as we speak. Is there anything else you would like to share before we say goodnight and let people go on their way?
I guess in this dismal season, we saw 2 guys tonight who are candidates for the NFL Comeback Player of the Year. I'll be astonished if Alex Smith doesn't win it now that he's come back from those 17 surgeries and, the injury and the infection 2 years ago that threatened not only his career but his life at one point. To make 3 consecutive starts now for Washington, and he's won 2 of them on the road. I'll be astonished if he's not the choice. But, also Aldon Smith coming back from 5 years away from football and overcoming some of his issues off the field to become a viable player and a reliable starter. He's started every game for the Cowboys this year after a 5-year absence. And then Randy Gregory is another guy who has been away via suspension because of his own misconduct and violation of the NFL's substance abuse policy multiple times. But, hey, it's worth noting that Randy Gregory has become a force. He had his first multi-sack game today in his Cowboys career in getting twice to Alex Smith.
And did a good job diving off the field that time they were trying to get the right personnel out there, although they did go ahead and call the timeout. It's always funny to watch a player do that. Ed, one last thing. Can you give me your review? I cane somebody. Tell me again, who was the halftime act? I went and took a walk. I'm still trying to it's good therapy for me. I knew the halftime was going to be a little bit longer than usual because of the Salvation Army, the famous halftime show that the Cowboys presented. Kane, Kane, I believe. Who is that was performing today?
Yeah, he doesn't dress like a country music star, but that's exactly what he is. He is a sequin wearing, jacket wearing, kind of brings a little swag to country music. And it was good to see him out there. I've seen him in concert a few times where he was on the undercard. I guess it seemed like a bad performance as far as lip syncing to me. The whole thing was recorded, I guess, about a month ago at AT&T Stadium because you can't have that kind of live performance during the pandemic.
Oh.
And so it was a little bit of a TV production component to it that ordinarily we might not see.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, Kane, I thought had a good effort. Saw a couple of bars there, and then I decided to move on.
He's pretty good
with my day. Good. Love a sequin jacket. I'm trying to think who else has done that in country music. I think you'd have to go all the way back. Some of the old ones used to do that. Conway Twitty might have put on a sequin jacket. Mickey Gilley could have slipped on somebody like that. But you don't see a lot of them pull off the sequin jacket. I don't think the possum George Jones ever put on the sequin jacket. But that's good, Ed. I know your favorite is Kenny Chesney, and I don't know if he's ever has he ever done the halftime, the Salvation Army halftime. I don't know that he has.
I'm not really sure. No, he's done a lot of shows at AT&T Stadium with 100,000 people in the building, but I've been blessed to be among them. But I don't know that he's ever done the halftime show. He's a big Sean Payton fan, big Saints fan. He played the Super Bowl party in Miami when the Saints won the Super Bowl. I was at that. Not as long as Sean was at it, but I was at it for a while.
One time they had a 12-year-old kid do the act. It was Billy Gilman or something. Billy, I always thought of him as Sid Gilman's grandson. I don't think he was, but it was named Billy Gilman, kind of a guy that hit it big young and then kind of went into a very awkward phase after that. All right, Ed, that's all we have for Thanksgiving. We want to thank Chris Gross.
Yeah, we do.
Frito Nation Productions. Happy Thanksgiving, Chris Gross. And I can see him right now. Just a really clean-cut young man who had a great Thanksgiving with his family. And then Ed, say hello to Frito. He always listens to us, and he's been doing some great work at his physical therapy as he continues to try to come back from a really tough medical situation. Ed, say something. Let everybody know how grateful you are to Frito, if that is the case.
If that is the case, yeah, I'm grateful to Frito, and I'm looking forward to working with him again at some point in the near future, and motivated and inspired by all he's endured and how he's handled it. And I mean, he's been in the hospital and a physical therapy facility for probably close to 4 months now. And he's, we've had to work without him almost the whole season. He's a really engaging, fun guy who's really good at what he does. And I read his updates on Facebook all the time and always try to post some kind of message, hoping he'll see it. And it'll make him, feel reassured that all of us are out here pulling for him.
Man, I wish you would send me a note sometime. Let me know you're pulling for me.
I think I've done that a few times.
That's okay. No, that is
mostly. I've
nice.
been trying to carry your slack.
Hey, buddy, you've done a great job. And I think you still, even though I'm almost back, you're still doing that. All right. Happy Thanksgiving to all of our subscribers. You can always subscribe on Stitcher and Apple and all the various ways, Spotify, Pandora, so many different ways you can come to us. We appreciate you guys. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. And we will see you. We'll see about this Ravens thing. Keep you posted. And then whenever that game is held, we will come to you following that game. Good night, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.
Reese's peanut butter cups are the greatest, but let me play devil's advocate here. Let's see. So, no, that's a good thing. That's definitely not a problem. Reese's, you did it. You stumped this charming devil.
Is this house a good price compared to others in the area? Are prices going up or down? If I don't make an offer right this very moment, will I miss my chance? These are just some of the questions a home buyer might ask. And these are the sorts of questions an agent who is a Realtor can help answer. Because Realtors have the expertise, data, and access to specialty training to help you navigate the process of buying a home. They provide support, guidance, and have your back every step of the way. That's what Realtors do, because that's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.